Morning, y'all. This will be your Unit 2, Day 3 notes, the last lesson before you take your quiz. You won't take the quiz first thing next week. We're going to have a review day with a practice quiz. So it'll be the second time we meet next week. For your warm-up, it says, name the transformations of f of x and graph. Remember the general form, a times f, x minus h plus k. What's the point of remembering it if you don't remember what they do? A is going to reflect, stretch, and compress. If you don't remember which one's which, you should pull out your day 1 notes. H is going to move it left and right. K will move it up and down. Here's my original. Here's my f of x. It's a funny looking shape there. And we're asked to find f of x plus 2. That's a k. It's on the outside of the f of x. The outside of the f of x is up and down. Plus 2 would represent a shift up 2. So each of these points here, this point, this point, this point, this point, and this point, the way I taught you is to make a table of values, which for this one, not quite as necessary, but when we get to the other ones, it'll be a lot harder. So let me zoom in, make my life a little easier. I'm going to take each of these points, I'm going to move them up 2. This one, actually I will make a table. Just doing it in my head's too much. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a negative 4, 4. If I move it up 2, that means this y value, up and down, is going to change the y values. This one's going to go up 2. So negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It moved up 2. Now let's do the next one, that point. That is negative 2, 0. Negative 2, 0. I'm going to change the y value. So negative 2, 2. How much did it change this y value? Up 2. Let's get the next point, this one. Negative 1, 1. Transformed, up 2 would be negative 1, 3. We can do this point. 1, negative 1, 1, negative 1. And we're shifting it up 2 since negative 1 plus 2 is 1. And then the last point. 2, 1. 2, 3. 2 plus 2. This y value goes up by 2. Now it's at 3. Connect the dots. And it's kind of like this original graph got shifted up. So what I did was I took all of these y values and I added 2 to them. That's the up transformation. Up and down changes the y's. What transformation would that be? A negative is a reflection about the x-axis. When you reflect about the x-axis, that means you're flipping over the x-axis. So all these y values will change. How much will they change? By a negative. You're going to take this negative, or -1, if there's nothing there, and you're going to multiply all these y values. So basically, instead of it being 4, 4, instead of being -4, 4, it would be -4, -4, -2, 0. Well, if you make a 0 negative, it's not really a thing, it's still 0. So it would be -2, 0, no change. -1, 1 would become -1, -1. 1, -1 would become 1, 1. All these y values are going to flip to negatives, or they're going to flip signs more accurately. So the first point, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. -2, 0. Okay. -1, 1. It's going to flip to the negative. 1, -1. It'll flip to the positive. 2, 1. 2, -1. And if I connect the dots, it's like your picture flipped over. How did it flip? All these negatives. Alrighty, the last one, do transformations. I see a stretch 2. That's right there. That's your A. And I see a right 3. Mr. Lu-Fleming, negative would go to the left, wouldn't it? But if you think about it, the negative's already part of it. So when I plug in the H, I'm plugging in a +3, which is right 3. I am definitely going to make an XY table for this new graph. Using this original, we're going to change them. If I'm moving right 3, the right and lefts change the x values. So all of these x values are going to be right 3. So it's a +3. So all these x's, I'm going to add 3. -4 plus 3 is -1. -2 plus 3 is +1. -1 plus 3 is 2. 1 plus 3 is 4. 2 plus 3 is 5. All of these x values over here from the OG, from the original, I added 3. Now, how do I do the stretch? The stretch, you're going to take these y values and you're going to multiply them by whatever that stretch was. So if it's stretch 2, you multiply each of these by 2. If it was stretch 4, you would multiply each of these by 4. If it was compress 1/2, if there's a 1/2 here, it's not a stretch, it's a compress. But how you approach it is the same way. You would multiply these y values by 1/2. We're okay with decimals. So 4 times 2 is 8. There's my first point. 0 times 2, still 0. 1 times 2, 2. 4, or -1 times 2 is -2. And 1 times 2 is 2. Here's my new points. -1, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ooh, way up there. 1, 0. Okay. 2, 2. 2, 2. 4, -2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. And 5, 2. And if we connect the dots, kind of looks like this graph here got shifted to the right a little bit, and then it was pulled at the tops and the bottom. It stretched out, so it's so much taller and narrower now. This is what you'll have to do for the quiz. Take your time with it. Write the equations for the following functions of g of x. G of x is your original. Well, you could have an a being multiplied in front. You could have an h on the inside, and you could have a k on the outside. Look at your notes up top that we just wrote down. Up here, what does the a do? What does the h do? What does the k do? I'm going to stop talking for a second so you can pause your video if you haven't written that down. Okay. Our question has a left 5, that's your h, and it has an up 3, that's your k. So I don't have an a, just translating. G of x minus left 5 would be a minus 5 plus 3. Here's the thing though. What's a minus minus do? I see a minus minus here. Minus minus. That's going to make this plus. So it'll look like plus 5 to go to the left because there's a minus minus in there. Okay. For b, I see a vertical compression of 1/2. Vertical compression of 1/2. That's an A. Stretch and compress is the A. And I see down 1. That's your K. No H this time. Nothing on the inside. But I am going to have something in front. Compress of 1/2. That means I'll have a 1/2 in the front. Plus down 1 is going to be a minus 1. Well, we don't need to have a plus minus. That's strange. Let's just make this minus 1. Just so we can separate the answer from that stuff I read up top. Okay. Vertical reflection. Vertical reflection. That's your A. Vertical stretch. That's also your A. Down 2. That's your K. No left or rights for this one. Okay. G of x. Well, how can you reflect and stretch? A reflection is if A is negative. So it's going to multiply by a negative and multiply by 4. How would I write that? Your A is negative 4. The reflection is the negative part, and the stretch is the 4. Plus down 2 is a minus 2. There's your K. Well, there's no reason to put plus minus. Better to just say minus. There's your new function. Two of the functions are graphed below. F of x is the parent. Based off these graphs, what is the equation of g of x? Okay. Here's f. Here's g. Name the transformations. So f is your original. We call that the parent. And g is the transformed. Sometimes we call that the child function. So what are the transformations? Well, let's pick some points and see how it changed. I want to look at these 3 points because those are the humps, or extrema, if you're thinking from last quiz. Put them on a table, x, y. This one is -3, 0, and 0, 1.5. It's kind of like in the middle. That one is 2, 0. All right, and then for the transformed x, y, we got -1, 0, 1, 3, and 3, 0. Interesting. So if I'm looking at these x values, ooh, Mr. Lu made a mistake. This is not -3. This is -2. Here I was thinking I could do it perfect the first time. What a joke. There we go. You might have been screaming at me, Mr. Lu, that number's wrong. When I'm looking at these x values, we had -2, and then I had -1. We had 0, and then I had 1. We had 2, then I had 3. So -2 to -1, that's like +1. 0 to 1, that's like +1. 2 to 3, that's like +1. Oh, consistently, they're all moved to the right one. So this original to the child, I think it translated right one. The left and right transformations are the only thing they're going to move these x values. Now the y's could be moved by an up and down shift. They can be moved by a stretch and compress. And they can be moved by a reflection. Let's talk about up and down shifts. Up and down shifts will add and subtract. Well, it went from 0 to 0. If you were adding something or subtracting something, that would change. And this third point, it went from 0 to 0. So if you were adding or subtracting something, that would change. So I don't think there's an up or down shift. And if you kind of just look at them, they're both on the x-axis. Like these low points are on the x-axis, and they're still on the x-axis. So if I'm choosing the correct equation, this one has an up and down shift. Definitely not that. This one has an up and down shift. So it's not that either. Maybe there's something else happening here though, because the y's did change. This middle point did change. It went from 1/2 to 3. How do I go from a 1/2 to a 3? You could add 1/2, but we just talked about how we weren't adding because it went from 0 to 0. There's no adding. What if I multiply? If I multiply 0, it still says 0. But if I multiply a number, then it'll change. So what would I multiply 1/2 by to get 3? You multiply 2. So my second transformation would be it stretched 2. Well, this first option here only has stretch 2, so it's not that. And here it is. Here's my new equation. The OG, or sorry, my new function, g of x, is the OG moved to the right 1 and stretched 2. You will have multiple choice questions on the quizzes that we give you and Performance Matters, and like if you take the SOL and ASVAB. So some of the test taking strategies is to eliminate the things that you know they aren't it. And then hopefully you get it down to like a 50-50 or you figure it out. Improve your odds. Last part of this. What are the transformations from H, or from F to H? So I'm basically identifying these transformations. What do we got? I can color coordinate this. This will be your H. The H is a positive 8 that was plugged in because originally it already had the negative. So this would be a translate right 8. And plus 7 on the outside, that's your K. That'd be a translate up 7. Give us the direction and the number. Don't just say right and up. Right 8, up 7. Okay. Same type of question. We're identifying the transformations. I do see an A this time. I see a negative. A negative is a reflection about the x-axis. What does the 1/2 do? It's also your A, but that's going to be a compression. It's going up half as fast. So it's like getting squished. Compression of 1/2, or vertical compression of 1/2. There's no H here. There's nothing inside with the X, but there is a K on the outside. There's your K. That's going to be up and down. Translate down 5. Review these notes as best you can. All 3 lessons have been on transformations. So if you have not memorized this, that A is reflect, stretch, and compress, H is left and right, K is up and down, and where those letters are, A is in the front, H is on the inside of the parentheses, K is on the outside. If you haven't memorized that, you got some studying to do this weekend because you're going to be totally boned for the quiz. You have to know what makes it reflect, what makes it stretch, what makes it compress, what makes it go left and right, and why is the left and right weird? Because of that negative, it's weird. And then what makes it go up and down. Okay. There is a practice activity for you to work through and a Delta Math as your graded homework. Good luck, y'all.